Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to the Gel Press YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing some really awesome gel press prints using some of my background stamps and creating some really fun Christmas cards with it. So without further ado, let's get into it. For today's video, I'm going to use the larger 8x10 inch gel press, so I'm just going to pull this out of its package. And then as you guys know, if you've seen a video from me before, I always like to just remove one of the plastic sheets that come with it, because then I can kind of move it around on my surface and not have it stick to anything. It's easier to set things off to the side then. For my prints today, I'm going to use a little bit of Dina Wakley acrylic paint, and the reason for this is because I like the heavy body medium that this is. So it's not going to really move on the plate, it's going to really hold its shape, which I really enjoy. So I'm going in with a couple of lighter and darker blue colors and also a purple in here. Just adding on a little bit of paint here and there because a little bit goes a long way with the gel press. All right, then I'm going to take this large gel press brayer and I'm just going to go back and forth. And this is where I'm going to look for kind of a mottled look. I don't really want the colors to be too blended, so I'm not going to continue going back and forth. Once I have this kind of effect right here, I like how that looks, so I'm going to leave this alone now and I'm going to start taking the prints. To take the print, I'm going to go in with my background stamp. Here I'm using a stitched Snowflakes background stamp from Simon Hurley Create. I'm just going to press this down, and then I just like to lightly press it down into the surface of this paint. Get it all to kind of make contact, and then I take it and just do a little tiny wiggle to make it so that it's going to take even more of that detail off there. So then once I pull it off, I'm going to have paint on here, which I'll set off to the side for just a second. Then I'm going to have this on the surface, and you guys can see that it kind of removed the area of where those snowflakes were. So I can take a beautiful print of that. All right, then we can pull off our print. And here you can see that you get those snowflakes all throughout, which is really awesome. And we just use that thin layer of paint. If you use too thick of a layer, they won't show up as well, but I like how they're kind of showing up there. All right, I'm going to set this off to the side now, and before the background stamp dries, I'm actually going to spray this with just a little bit of water over top, and then we'll go in with another piece of my stark white cardstock and stamp this down. And this is just going to give me a nice crisp background with that kind of mottled color all the way across with those beautiful snowflakes. And there, you can see there's a lot more detail in this type of print because it was just using that stamp. Now before I go in and do anything else, I want to make sure that this is cleaned off before anything dries. So I'm going to go in, spray it with some water, and then clean my stamp off just to make sure I can get all the acrylic paint off of there. All right, with the leftovers that's on the gel press, I'm actually just going to go in and spray it with a little bit of water, and then I'm going to just take a piece of my scrap stark white cardstock and start kind of pulling this cool print. And I find when it's got a little bit of water in the paint, it'll kind of lift and blend a little bit and create this kind of cool texturized background with the leftover paint. So that's what I'm gonna do. I just like to spray it and take this kind of cool print off of it. There's always a little bit of leftover paint in my brayer too, and I've struggled to really get it off because I'm usually brayering on top of a hard surface. But I find that if you place your piece of cardstock onto your gel press, and then you go in with your brayer, and you just go kind of across like this, you're able to get a lot more of that paint off than you would if you were just brayering on top of a harder surface because it's kind of got that squish to it. And then when we lift this off, you're gonna get that beautiful kind of brayered print, and again, this is great for die cutting off of or layering on top of, which is really fun. Now let me show you how to use one of these painted backgrounds that we pulled the stamped image out of. So I love how nice and subtle this is, but again, I want to build some layers. So I made sure the paint is really nice and dry on here, and I'm going to go in and do some embossing using the Stitched Snowflakes background stamp. Now to do this, I'm going to go in with my anti-static powder tool before we get started to again make sure that it's not going to stick where we don't want it. And then we can go in with a little bit of VersaMark clear sticky ink and ink up my background to get ready for stamping. All right, then we can take this background and place it right down into here. And again, use our stamp pressure tool to just go around and make sure that we get every single spot on the stamp. Now for our heat embossing, I'm using a little bit of penny ink, but you could use gold, white, anything like that. And I'm just going to kind of dump it haphazardly along the edge to create a line of these snowflakes because we want to leave the center unembossed. All right, so just dumping on the last bit of that embossing powder there, and I really like how this is looking. Now, if you want to, you could also go in using just a paintbrush and kind of make the edges even a little bit more distressed by bringing in this brush and just kind of tapping things on. And I'm gonna do that kind of all around this edge to clear things up even a little bit more like that. All right, so I'm just gonna take the excess powder and dump it back into the jar. All right, then we'll go in and heat set this until it's nice and shiny. All right, I love how this is turning out. Now all I need is to finish it off with a focal point sentiment, and I think the handwritten Christmas sentiment or set is the perfect one for this. And I've been waiting for one to use this Silent Night, Holy Night sentiment on, and I think this fits just perfectly on there. For this, I'm gonna use a little bit of vellum, so I'm just going in with my clear, sticky VersaMark ink, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment right on top there. Although I used the shiny penny embossing powder for the sentiment, I'm gonna stick with white just so that it's really nice and readable and not super shiny. And when you heat this up, you just wanna keep your heat tool moving so that it doesn't really warp the vellum as you're heating it. And then again, I'll just simply cut kind of around the vellum. This way it doesn't cover up too much of the card. The goal with the vellum was to use it so that it really just highlights the background and doesn't take away from the card. All right, for this, I find that I just use a little tiny bit of tape runner here and there on the back of this sentiment, and a little bit goes quite a long way with this, and I just kind of hide it behind the embossing. I find that liquid adhesive spills out and looks weird, so this is my favorite way to just hide some adhesive behind there, and then we can add it right onto the center of the card. All right, and I love how that really came together so simply with the focal point as that beautiful sentiment, and then using one of those stamped backgrounds to really create that awesome layered effect on there. All right, here are the colors I'm using in this next print. I'm going for a kind of more red color family. Again, I'm sticking with kind of the similar color families here so that the paints, when they mix and kind of model together like we're doing it, it's not going to create a muddy color. All right, then taking my brayer that I kind of cleaned off last time, we'll go in and start brayering this out. And oh my gosh, I love that color palette. It's just some beautiful colors mixed together. All right, so I'll go in here and just brayer it out enough. Once again, I'm not brayering it too much so that all of the colors mix together. I like this kind of color variation that we're getting into there. So again, I'm going to go in with a stamp. You could of course go in with a stencil, but I love using these background stamps. Here I'm going in with this one called Festive Florals, again from Simon Hurley Create. I'll go in and apply a little bit of pressure, and then same thing, do that little kind of wiggle there. We don't want to lose a lot of the detail, but we just want to pull up a little bit extra of that paint so you can really see the outlines. So then I'm going to lift that off. You'll see that there's paint on top of here, which we can collect in a second. All right, and once that's done, we can lift this off and see that beautiful print that we got. And now I didn't clean off all of the paint from the last one, so there's still a little bit of blue in there, but I love this kind of texture that we're getting from that background stamp. I think that's really beautiful. All right, and I'm gonna follow the same process. I wanted to share the same thing kind of two different ways with the different stamps so we can share the different results that we can get, and it really does look different every time depending on how much paint you use and things like that. I love this one. That little bit of water in there really reacted it, and I like this kind of marbled look that you get from it. You can't just get that from inks, which I think is super cool, that you can take that from the gel press. All right, same thing, I'll add a little bit of water down here to take another print, and this time I didn't add as much water, so you can see it kind of stays a little bit more solid like the paint colors, and still gives us this beautiful mottled effect on the background. And you can go as much or as little as you want. I think that's where I'm going to stop there. I like that we still got a little bit of orange in there. Not every color is blended together, and it creates this beautiful background that we can die cut from. All right, and last but not least, we'll go in and do a quick cleaning of my brayer and wipe that onto that second piece of cardstock. And I love how that brayered piece looks as well. It's just fun to get 4 different prints. All right, so I'm gonna use this one that we picked up with a little bit of water, and I told you guys, these backgrounds are great for building. So I'm gonna use that same background stamp that we lifted it off with. This is the Festive Florals, and I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Love Struck Simon Hurley Create ink and just ink up my background stamp. This is a nice kind of darker red berry color, similar to the ones that we used on our print, so it's gonna match pretty nicely. and lay that down. And then to give some pressure, I just use kind of a pressure tool that you would usually use with your MISTI, but I found that these are great for giving some pressure down onto your background stamp to make sure that everything transfers nicely. All right, I love that tone-on-tone look with that little bit of variation in the background, almost like a tie-dye look, and then that on top really finishes it off nicely. All right, so one thing I really love about these background stamps from Simon Hurley Create is you can take out pieces and use them separately. So I'm gonna use this poinsettia by itself, as well as I love this other larger branch of berries. And there's other images in here that pull out too. So then we can go in and stamp these separately. So then we can go in, add these onto our acrylic blocks and stamp these out separately to create them as a focal point on our card. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of black ink and stamp it down onto some stark white cardstock. And then I always like to throw over a layer of clear embossing powder before that dries to hold in any watercolor, and I'm gonna heat set this until it turns clear and shiny. All right, then I'm just gonna take some ink pads and apply them down onto my craft sheet. Here I'm using Love Struck, and then I'll go in with a little bit of Viper, and then I'm gonna grab a little bit of water, and I always like to start out my watercoloring with adding a layer of water down onto my image first. And this is going to really help all of the colors that I add down next really blend without drying into the cardstock right away. Here I'm adding down a wash of Love Struck first, and just a light layer of this color is all that I need to lay down a base. And as I go down with that first layer of color, you can see that water makes a really big difference to help blend this color onto the surface and make it all look even and soft, rather than it just sinking right into the cardstock and not moving at all. All right, then I'm gonna take less water and go in with more concentrated color and just add that kind of right in the center and add some shading in with this. So you can see I'm just going in on those leaves and adding a little bit of that darker color with the exact same ink pad, but just less water. All right, so for the leaves, I've added my water down, and then I'm gonna start off with a little bit of Viper in here. And again, use a little bit more water to kind of blend out the first layer of that color. But you could also go in with another color like Fake Plant and add that in, which is gonna give you a whole different look and add a little bit more green in. So if that's something you want to, you can go into a whole different kind of looking color and add different undertones to it. All right, to fussy cut these images out, I'm just going in with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. I love these scissors because they kind of spring back out at you. So it makes it really easy to cut into all of these little details without your hands getting tired. So I'm just doing this, leaving a little bit of a white border all around the images. When it comes to an image like this, where it might look like there's a lot of little details you have to get into, I actually literally just skip around them. So if there's any super little details you don't feel like getting into, just kind of round the corner there and leave a little bit of white, because there's no way I'm going into all of those little berries like that. And for this, I'm also gonna break it into another little sprig so I can use 2 of them on my project. So I'm just cutting this one out down here, and then this guy will be separate and tucked in. You'll see how it works out. Once I've got everything arranged how I want it, I'm going to just pull out these little berry branches here and add a little bit of liquid adhesive. These are gonna go down right onto the card. So just add that down and then tuck it right back in. Then I'm going to add the poinsettia down on a little bit of foam tape so that it keeps a little bit of dimension, and I love how that clustering looks. I finished it off with the sentiment from the Posh Poinsettias stamp set, and that really completes the card nicely. I love how we used just that watercolor background that we created from the gel press and did a little bit of stamping to really finish it off. It shows how you can use those kind of backgrounds that you might not really think of using for a really beautiful card. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll try some gel press printing with your background stamps. It is tons of fun using those backgrounds in your card making projects. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to the Gel Press channel to never miss another video like this one from all of the talented gel press designers. Alright guys, I'll see you very soon, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!